Hola, chicos. So talking about the subjunctive and subordinate clauses, it's all kinds of fun. I'm going to go back a little bit to review sentence structure because I feel like if you understand that a little bit better, the indicative subjunctive stuff will be easier. So let's talk about simple and compound sentences. Primero, simples, las oraciones simples. Simple sentences usually have one conjugated verb, but they could also have a series of conjugated verbs together, right? So you could just be, it could be short or long. Estudiamos, that's a complete sentence. We study, or we studied, could be present or past. Or it could be a long sentence like siempre estudiamos en la biblioteca los lunes por la tarde después de la clase de matemáticas. Even though it's a really long sentence, there's still only one conjugated verb. Now, we could add a verb there like estudiamos y charlamos. So we study and we chat. You could count that as two different sentences, or you could count it as a coordinate clause. Yeah, anyway, you don't need to worry about that. That's stuff that grammarians argue over. Anyway, but the bottom line is, if you have a sequence of verbs, it would be like one right after the other. But usually, if there's more than one conjugated verb, it's a compound sentence. And if there's only one conjugated verb, it's a simple sentence. All right, so compound sentences have more than one conjugated verb, and they can be coordinate and subordinate. Coordinates, when you have two independent clauses joined together to make one sentence, and subordinates are when you have one main clause and one dependent clause that depends on that main clause. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. For coordinate sentences, las oraciones coordinadas, connectors in English are and, or, but, neither, nor. In Spanish, y or a, remember both ways of saying and, o or u, both ways of saying or, pero, sino, y ni. You don't really need to worry about the types, but it's just to show you an example of how all those are used. So you could have copulativas, where the two sentences both affirm or negate whatever it's talking about. So mi madre es profesora y mi padre es ingeniero. Both of those things are true. Y el verano pasado ni visité a mis abuelos ni estuve en casa de mis padres. So neither of those things are true. You could also have disyuntivas. The two sentences are mutually exclusive, so only one of them can be true, which would be with o or u. O vas al cine o vas al teatro. So either you go to the movies or you go to the theater. Theater in this case means like a live event. Tenemos que decir la verdad u ocultar la evidencia. So we have to tell the truth or hide the evidence. Okay. Tipos. You could also have adversativos when the two sentences express a caveat or a conflict with pero, sino, or sino que. Viene, pero prefiere hacerlo en la noche. So he's coming, but he prefers to do it at night. No solo viene, sino que también trae amigos. So he's not only coming, he's bringing friends. And then yuxtapuestas are when you have sentences that are joined by commas rather than a connecting word. And the most famous example is I came, I saw, I conquered, vine, vi, venci, from the Latin veni, vidi, vici. Anyway, that's just all that to say, like, these are compound sentences, compound coordinates, where both, if you split up those sentences, you could, if you took out the connecting word, you'd still have two complete sentences, right? So viene, complete sentence. Prefiere hacerlo en la noche, complete sentence. And then viene, también trae amigos. So if you take out all the connecting words, you still have complete sentences. Now, subordinate clauses. If you take out all the connecting words, you might have one complete sentence and one incomplete sentence, but you might also have two incomplete sentences. And that's where we're going to be focusing our attention for the rest of the semester, because the subordinates are where we have the subjunctive. I would not go over this if it were not important to know, like, why do you need to know this? Why do you have to understand what these sentences are, these sentence types? And the reason is because and this is how I was, like, I had no clue when to use the subjunctive. I don't understand the rules at all. And it was because I didn't realize, okay, there's three different sentence types. And once you know the three different sentence types, then you know, oh, okay, I know when to use the subjunctive. All right, so here they are. Nominal is a noun clause. And the dependent clause, that means that the dependent clause is occupying a noun space in the main clause, okay? Which means it's either acting as a subject or a direct object. Now, maybe all of you are going, what the heck does that mean? All right, so a noun, right? Noun is a person, place, or thing. A noun in a sentence is always the subject, okay, the person that does the action, or the direct object, the person that receives the action, but it doesn't have to be a person. It could be a thing also, right? So if we have a sentence like, the news is important, so la noticia es importante, the subject is la noticia, right? That's a noun. And remember that in Spanish, you can rearrange your sentences and put that subject pretty much anywhere. That's not entirely true. But you could say, es importante la noticia. So when we have a dependent clause sitting in a noun spot, we just take our whole clause, the whole part of a sentence, and put it in the spot of the subject. So, es importante que llegues temprano. So now we're not saying the news is important, we're saying that you arrive early is important. And now you have a whole sentence, or a sentence fragment, a clause, sitting in the spot, in the subject spot, so it's in a noun spot. Or it could function as the direct object. Remember, the direct object answers the question who or what receives the action of the verb. So if you say, the teacher told us the truth, who or what did the teacher tell us? The truth, that's the direct object. But you could also put an entire clause in that spot. So instead of saying, the teacher told us the truth, the teacher told us there's no class tomorrow. Right? And so now there's no class tomorrow is sitting in the spot where that noun normally sits, right? The truth, but instead of the truth, you have that there's no class tomorrow. So that's basically it. Why are those called noun? That confused me for a long time. So why are they called noun clauses? Because they're not nouns. Because they're sitting in a noun spot in the sentence, which means they're functioning as the subject of the sentence or the direct object of the sentence. Okay. That one's probably the most confusing type. The other ones are pretty straightforward. It could also be an adjective clause. And in an adjective, the dependent clause is occupying an adjective space in the main clause, which means that it is describing a noun. So you could say, tengo un carro rojo, and rojo is describing carro, it's an adjective. Or you could say, tengo un carro que no usa mucho gasolina. And now, que no usa mucha gasolina is describing carro, so it's functioning as an adjective because it's sitting in an adjective spot and it's describing carro. That's it for adjective ones. Adverbials, much the same. They're a little bit more complicated because there's different types, but that means that the dependent clause is occupying an adverb space in the main clause, which means it's telling us something about the verb. So, fui al supermercado ayer. Ayer is an adverb. It's telling us when did I go. I went to the grocery store yesterday. But you could also replace ayer with a phrase that's also telling you when this happened. So, fui al supermercado antes de que cerrara. I went to the grocery store before it closed. And now that before it closed is sitting in that adverb spot, functioning as an adverb because it's describing when I went to the grocery store. Okay, so why does it matter? With few exceptions, the subjunctive is only used in dependent clauses. And the rules of when it's used totally depend on, is it a noun clause, an adjective clause, or an adverb clause? And I don't have them yet, but I have more videos going over like, how does that work? How do you know? Uso de subjuntivo, next video coming up, how to decide when to use indicative and when to use subjunctive. Tune back in next time for more grammar fun. Ciao.